All right, today we are making the perfect mask. See the height on that? This is my cable tie mask that I came up with the pattern in order to keep the mask away from my mouth and nose. I do some, not heavy labor, but labor at work that requires me to get exerted. And when you're sucking that material in and out of your mouth, it makes you feel more claustrophobic and anxious. So this one's really nice. It goes, puffs out, so it doesn't contact your nose, does not contact your lips. It's great also for if people have issues with the face rubbing and the acne, that you don't get those issues with this. It holds your makeup stays on, doesn't touch your lipstick or nothing. So I'm just going to call it the perfect mask. It's not super hard to make. There are a few little more. I do a simpler version plate wise, but this one I find I've created more of a channel along here, and it just really secures the cables in and holds it really nice. So watch the video and we'll teach you how to make it. All right, so let's get started making the mask. So the template for the mask is this shape. And we are going to need 4 total of this shape, 2 for the outside and 2 for the inside. So the first thing we're going to do is put right sides together and match them up. And then I usually just put 3 pins in it. And we'll do the same with these pieces. All right, now that we've got both sides pinned, we are going to take it to the sewing machine, and we're going to do a 1/4 inch seam stitch along this one and also on this one. All right, so now we're gonna bring it to the sewing machine, and I know my 1/4 inch allowance is there. The big tip I can tell you is don't turn your fabric when you stick it in there, because you need that seam depth in there to match up with your other mask or other side. So I just go right in there. You can see where my fabric line's up there on that inner little thing, and it's just going to keep going that way. And the same when you come out at this end, just make sure you get that where it's coming out straight. And you can see how that goes all the way around there. And we'll do that to the next piece. All right, so I removed the pin. It's a rounded corner. I go ahead and snip it, but I also snip a bit. Obviously, don't get your stitch. But the most important part is up here, because that's going to be where your nose is. So if you can flatten that out, we'll press it out, and that helps on the edge, but also on rounded corners. So all I do is, again, don't get too close to the stitch. I go up probably about 1 inch or so. It doesn't make a huge difference. I'm not pressing this part. Then I flip it when I kind of get halfway, and then I do it here. So I'm staying away from that. And then we'll go ahead and same thing on this side. All right. So this is going to help on the nose. It takes less bulk away from the material. So what I do is I spread out this piece, and then I open up this end little piece right here, just this one. And once I get it open, I hold it, but I kind of tug at the material there too, just to make sure it's all the way out for the whole seam. And then I just carefully take the nose of my iron and press that piece flat. And then I'm going to do the same on the other edge. When I open it, I double check it. And then I just take the nose again and press it. So out of all those snips, those are the only 2 I'm pressing. So I'm going to go ahead and do that on the blue piece here too. All right, so I have each top side of the pieces ironed. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin right sides together. So basically you're going to start at one end and just line that up. And then I just eyeball my fold there. So that looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and put my pins in. I start here, and then I just come up the one side to the nose or the top. I do 3 pins. And then I come back to this side. So we're still on that same edge here. So then I'm just going to put a pin on here. And then I turn it around, so I've got that side pin, then I turn it around over here and match these sides and do the exact same thing. All right, so we got that all of it pinned together. Do need to keep something you can put your finger through a hole here. Usually I do a little more than 1 inch, but if you've got smaller fingers. So we're gonna start our stitching here. It's gonna be a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Whenever I start on this piece, I do a back stitch just to keep it more secure. You're gonna go to the corner, come down, and basically just do a 1/4 inch all the way around until you get back to this corner. You're going to come up and over and again back stitch, and that helps so that when you put your finger in, it doesn't break the stitches open. So let's go to the machine and do that. All right, so again we're going to come over this way following my 1/4 inch seam allowance again. I'm going to go forward, back, and then forward again. And at every point you pivot and turn, you want it to be at a 1/4 inch. So the way to tell that is when you think you're close enough, make sure your needle's down. You're going to lift your back area and come around. Now, I didn't come over quite enough there, and I can tell because it's not lining up with my piece right there. So then I'm going to pivot it back and come over 1 more stitch, pivot it again. And now I can tell it's where I want it to be because it lines up. So then same, we're gonna go up to this edge. You're gonna stop with your needle in. You're gonna turn it. Again, it's still at a 1/4 inch, so just keep going. And when I get up to the top edge here where I press down, I just make sure it's still down at the bottom. And there. I'm just going to keep going around all the way down to that edge. Pivot it, 1/4 inch still. And after you've been doing it, you kind of get an idea where your 1/4 inch stops, so it becomes a lot easier. So you just keep going all the way around. Okay, so this is our ending side. So same thing. We're going to come right down to the edge. That 1/4 inch seam allowance. We're going to only come over a bit. Then we're going to back stitch. And again, we're leaving that hole open to put our finger through to turn it inside out. All right, now I go around and remove all the pins out. And so this is what it looks like right now. So now, before we turn it inside out, we're going to do a trimming on each corner. Don't get super close, but we're going to just trim the corner off straight across. Just helps when we turn it inside out for it to be a flatter corner. Now the other thing we're going to do is at each pivot here, we're just going to snip in, but again, don't get too close. So at each one of those, there's 4 total. And then up where we had pressed our ends there, I cut some of the bulk out of there. I just kind of go straight across. You don't have to be fancy or picky. Just take some of the bulk out of that end piece, because those are the pieces that are near your nose and your chin. Now that I've done that, what I actually do, I find works well, is at this area that I'm going to put my finger in, I fold the one side back to where the seam will be, and I press it, and then I turn it over and do the same thing on the other side. And that way when I turn it in, it's the material's not poking out, and I don't end up sewing it or anything because it gets sewn when I do the elastic part. So I just went ahead and pressed that down. It's not a must, I just find it's a good tip. So then I go ahead and open it up, and I'm gonna stick my finger in there, and I'm gonna go all the way to the other side. I usually just go to a corner and take my thumb and join it, and then by keeping my fingers, my thumb comes back out here, pushing that piece, and I just start pulling it all the way through. Once I get it pulled out, I then put my finger back in, and I go to that edge where I cut my corners out, the opposite side, and I just push and make sure I push where the corners are to pop that material out right there, so you can see that now. And then I just kind of go along the seam to push it out, and then same here. Now a good tip I've learned too is if you have a hard time getting your finger in there, you can take your scissors and push that point out. And that just pops it right out. And then I'll do that sometimes to the other end if I have issues. Because I'll just carefully take my scissors and poke it at those ends just to make sure you're getting them out there. So now you'll see where we iron those 2 pieces in. They're folded over there, and it looks more finished than it would if you had those pieces sticking out. So the next thing we want to do is we need to press it for the next set. So what I usually do is I start at this end here and just iron it carefully. And then what I do is I come up, and you want to make sure your seam's pulled out as much as it can be. It just makes for a nicer, neater mask. Once I feel that edge is good there, then I take my iron and just press that section. And then I go over to the other side. And I always work on one side of the mask first and then turn it to the other side. So again, on this side, now I press that. And then once I've got that on both sides pressed, I then come up and just go towards the middle. And then I'll just come up here and press it a little bit in there again. And there. And then I go to the other side. Press this side first, the little end. And I'm going to make sure my seam comes out there. Compared to my other mask, there's a lot more I do with this one, but the end result is so much nicer. The other mask works great. It keeps it away from your face. There's nothing wrong with it. This just, to me, has a more polished, professional look to it. And when I was trying to create this mask, it's taken quite the metamorphosis. So I think I finally found the end. And I will not be trying to improve it from here because I'm super happy with this one. So same idea, just into the ends there. And you're good to go. So the next step is we make the pot, basically fold over here and here to make channels for the cable tie to go in. And so you start on one edge. I just kind of make sure this edge is flat, push this away a little bit. And then you're basically going to turn it over 3/4 of an inch. So you just want to get your tape measure and you can see right there, we have 3/4 of an inch. So that's good there. And then when we fold it, it's basically going to go straight out the sides, and we want to leave about a 3/8 of an inch. It doesn't have to be perfect. You're going to kind of notice your width, especially if you make a few. But 3/8 of an inch, I'll show you past the one because it's kind of hard to see. So every second one is an 1/8. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3. And you can see right there, it's that much from the edge. So I just take, again, I just eyeball it. But when you're first making them, kind of like use your tape measure just to get a feel for it. And then all I do is I just help to hold it by pressing it out. And then put a couple pins in. I just turn my pins pointing the way I'm going to start. So I'll start sewing at this end. So just to kind of hold it in. You don't really have to do that. It usually holds pretty well. But again, just for starting purposes, I'll show you the greatest way to do it. And then you can take your shortcuts based on how you feel. So again, a 3/4 of an inch. I find it hard to tell sometimes by the end piece with that metal on there. But there we go. So 3/4 of an inch. And then again, you're just going to come out on each side till it's about 3/8 from there to there. Then I just go ahead and press it. And put a couple pins in. So the unique thing with my masks is I do create structure with a zip tie. So I basically cut a end off here about that length just to allow me to use this to make my lines on my sewing. So instead of trying to measure, what I do, get your disappearing ink there or whatever works for you. And I'm basically going along that seam right there. So right here. So I'm going to put my cable tie piece right up that seam. And then I'm just going to mark it at that end and that end. Or you can just draw a line around the whole thing. Why don't we just do that to make it easier? Okay. And I'm going to do that on both my sides. And these are the pockets that hold the ties in. And it makes a huge difference to have that in. All right, so let's take it to the machine. Okay, so I'll try to get it nice and close for you to see here. So basically where that piece came up 3/8 of an inch away from that corner, I'm going to just keep that, reinforce it, that's the 1/8 of an inch. And I'm just gonna get it so that my needle's gonna hit right on that piece of fabric, right at the corner there. And all we're gonna do around here is top stitching and make the channel. So you're gonna go just along the edge there. So put your needle down. And you're just gonna run it right along there. And you're gonna keep an eye where that line is. And once your needle hits that line, you're gonna make sure the needle stays down. You're gonna pivot it, and we're basically coming up this line to here. Now you don't wanna go all the way over the edge, but you do wanna go as close as you can because this is what creates your pocket. So I'll usually go, I don't know if you can see that, I'll lift it so you can, not really. You'll see when I'm done. So then lift it again, you're pivoting it. And again, you want that same amount of seam allowance there. And then you're just gonna go to that next line. And you're gonna come down that line. Then you wanna be about the same amount as you were on the other side. Pivot it. I just make sure it's laid out there nice. Take that pin out, and now I'm just going to come down there to that corner. And then once I get all the close to that corner, I'm going to lift it, pivot it, and now I'm doing my top stitch all the way along the top. So same idea, just keep your edge over there. Basically going right over that area you just made your channel in. And then you're going to come all the way to that corner and then take it out and cut it. So now you can see, so we started here, did our stitch, came up where we put the channel, up, over, down, all the way along, then back up here, and all the way over there. So this here now is where your cable tie is gonna go. See how it fits right in there? You don't want it too loose because it'll go back and forth. So that's perfect, and you got the height there to stabilize it more. So now we're gonna do the other side. All right, so we've gotten both the edges done in there for the cable. Now we're gonna do the elastics for the side. So I found these elastics I really like. They're elastics for hair, but they're extra long for thick hair. So if you fold it in half, it's a 5-inch length that way, so 10 inches total. So you can use any elastic you choose. This one so basically it's a 10-inch. If you cut a piece and laid it out, it's a 10-inch piece of elastic. So whatever you can equivalent to that, you can use. So now right where those little corners where we made, where it flares out, that's basically where our elastic's gonna go, and we're gonna fold it over. So basically, you can see how it's centered there, and you want this piece. So you also want this to be 3/4 of an inch. So you're just gonna take your tape measure. So that's 3/4, and I just kind of check on both sides. You can kind of tell when you have them straight and 3/4. So then I will take 2 pins and I will put one in pinned. The best way I can describe to do this, because it's not always an exact perfect match along there, it's about 3 inches. So what I do, so 1.5 inches is the middle. What I do is I get it to where I can see this whole edge. Then I put it from one end to the other and I center the 3 inches. If it's a little over, just still center that 3 inches in there. And what you can do is just lightly put a mark where that halfway point is between this edge and this edge. So at 1.5 inches, I'm just putting a little dot there. So it's right there. And then I'm going to do the same thing I did on my top and bottom, is I'm now taking my twist tie and I'm going to put it right in that center section there. And I'm going to mark it here and here. And sometimes since the ink disappears anyway, I'll extend the line a little more, just because sometimes it is hard to see in there. So there we have it, and I'll go ahead and do the same on the other side. Another tip you can do to help when you are folding in is I have a twist tie. You could use a piece of cardboard or anything, and on it I have marked a 3/8 section and a 3/4 inch section. So that way when I come here and I'm like, oh, okay, I want my seam to 3/4, it's really easy to hold it. I get where I want it, and then I just go ahead and put my pin in. So it's a little easier than trying to fiddle around with a measuring edge, but either way is fine. But just like I said, a little tip to help you out there. So now we're going to take our piece in, and what I do, again, it's kind of like a top stitch here. You're not going in super deep, and this is going to create that channel. So I come down on the other side of the edge just by a bit, because I want to back stitch it across there so it doesn't lift. So I do stitches over till I hit that edge there. And then that's where I want to put a back stitch in, because it reinforces it. And I'm going to come over so you can see my lines there and there. It's harder to see if you do a darker material, but the lighter material is a little easier. So then I'm pivoting it, and I'm going to come up that line. And I don't really want to sew into the elastic. So you're just going to come up, you'll kind of get a feel for it, come up that line. And then you can see the elastic section in here. So I'm right up to that edge there. Again, needle down, pivot it. And this is where it's nice too to see those lines down there to give you an idea. Then I'm going to take it, needle down again, pivot it, and I'm going to come down, and this again is the channel that's going to hold your cable tie in on the side sections. I pivot it, I come back down, when I get over the edge to there, go a little bit over, back stitch, good. So if I take those pins out, you can now see I created that channel in there for that cable tie to go. So now we're going to do it on the other side. All right, so now you can see we have top and bottom and 2 sides done. This is disappearing ink, it'll go away. But I wanted to do a lighter material for you to be able to see. So we have our cable ties. I do buy a 14-inch cable tie. I find it'll do 1 mask, at least of this size. So it's nice for the 14-inch. There is a smooth side and a rough side. You always want to make sure in the mask that your smooth side is up, because if you put it the other way, it does have a tendency, it could pop out. But I take the end, and you kind of have a little tip that helps you get it through the end. I don't want that piece on. I want it a little sturdier. So I actually just use my cuticle cutters and cut the tip off. And then with smooth side, I will push it all the way in, and you want to get it all the way to the end there. So I always do my center piece first. Then what you're going to do is you're going to come to the other side, and as you come to that side, you're going to take your cable tie and you're going to push down as firm as you can without it flipping. And then take your thumb and hold it there. And our stitching is right there, so I want to come a little bit underneath it. So, and you want it tight, because if you do it too loose, if they're popping out on you, you did it way too loose. And then it's going to go into that channel. All right. Then you're going to take that same piece, and I just slip it underneath here. And I'm pulling it through, and I'm going to put it in the channel on one side. It's going to go right in there. Then with this, again, I'm going to hold it here, and I'm going to press down. And you can see how the wrinkles are coming out of it too. So same idea here, pinch it from front to back. You see your line that you made right here. So you're just going to come below that and snip it, and then go into that channel. Now, sometimes the material is wrinkly on the inside because it is two of the same pieces sewn into each other, but that's okay. You don't feel any of that, but it's basically your outside. So you can see the nice height on that. And being it is cupped so well, it's also really good. Like if you wear makeup, not that we can really take off our masks and show all our lipstick and stuff, but if you have it on underneath, you get no contact on your lips nor your nostrils with this, so it's amazing. So there you have it. That is one of my cable tie zip masks, and that is my final production. I'm really happy with this one. It's more professional looking, wears really well, and I hope you enjoyed the video. I know it's a bit longer, and I do a lot more technique on this one compared to my original cable tie mask. But again, I just find making these channels on the sides helps a lot more. Another thing you can do that I do on the mask is I buy these little clear goodie hair ties. They're small. And what I'll do is I'll take two of my fingers and wrap it around them twice. Well, once, I guess. And then what you can do is pull the center ones out. Just pinch them together. Take your elastic there and go over them. And then go back in and put them back in on the sides. There. And that is just an extra way to get it centered back. And there you have it. And that just anchors it a little more so they don't slide. But otherwise, there you have it. Like the video, share it please, subscribe, and if you have any questions or comments, leave them for me. Thank you.